I was never ready to say goodbye. Even now, years later, the memory of that day, the day we took our last ride together, remains etched in my heart like it happened just yesterday. My father, Raj Malhotra, was many things: a beloved school principal, a devoted husband, a quiet philosopher, and most of all, my best friend. He never raised his voice, never boasted about his achievements, and never let his pain show, not even when his body began to betray him. He had been battling cancer for 2 years, and yet he never allowed it to define him. To the world, he remained strong and cheerful, teaching even while being treated. But I saw the weight behind his smile when I visited every few months from Mumbai, where my advertising job had slowly swallowed my days, my nights, and perhaps parts of my soul. The morning of March 17th started like any other. I was buried in presentations, stuck in the loop of deadlines when I received the call from the hospital. The voice on the other end was calm but heavy. "You should come. It could be any time now." I left everything and flew to Delhi, my heart pounding with fear and guilt. Guilt that I hadn't spent enough time with him. Guilt that I had believed there would always be more time. When I reached our home in Ghaziabad, he was lying on his bed, thin and frail, but smiling like he had just returned from a walk in the park. "Beta," he said weakly, "will you take me for a ride?" "A ride?" I asked, trying to conceal my shock. "You're so weak, Papa." He looked at me with the same eyes that had once taught me how to ride a bicycle. One last ride to the river. I knew better than to say no. Our old ambassador hadn't run in years. It was tucked under a dusty tarpaulin in the garage. My childhood flashed before my eyes as I uncovered it. Birthday trips, school drop-offs, Sunday picnics. I called the neighborhood mechanic, who, by some miracle or divine nudge, had it humming within an hour. I helped Papa into the front seat. He insisted on sitting upright, adjusting his kurta and Nehru cap as though he were headed to a ceremony. As we drove through the city, he pointed at things like a man revisiting a slideshow of his life. "There's my first school. That's where your mother and I went for golgappas. Oh, and this is the banyan tree I once climbed to hide from your grandfather." Each sentence was a window into a past I had never bothered to ask about. The roads were crowded, honking and busy, but in that car, we were cocooned in stillness, carried by memory. "You know, Arav," he said suddenly, "when you were born, I was terrified." "You? Terrified?" I laughed. "You've always been fearless." He looked out the window. "I wasn't ready to be a father. I thought I would fail you, but your mother, she gave me courage. She said love would teach us everything." I swallowed the ache in my throat. At the riverbank, we parked under the same neem tree where he had once brought my mother after their wedding. The sun was starting to set, painting the sky in hues of orange, pink, and farewell. "I wish she were here," he said, his eyes fixed on the rippling water. "She is," I whispered, "in every word you say." He smiled faintly. "I wanted you to see this place again with me, not just as a destination, but as the end of a beautiful road." We sat there for a long while, barely speaking. He closed his eyes and let the breeze wash over his face. Then he said, "I think it's time to go home." That night he passed away in his sleep. No pain, no struggle, just a calm farewell, as though he had already said everything he needed to during our ride. After the funeral, the days that followed were filled with condolences, rituals, and relatives I hadn't seen in years. Everyone had stories. How he had paid for a poor student's fees, how he had stayed back after school to tutor the weakest kids, how he remembered every single teacher's birthday. I realized I had only known fragments of my father. I decided to stay back for a few weeks. The ambassador, surprisingly, had started becoming a comfort. I would drive it every morning to places he loved, The school, the tea stall, the bookshop where he had once taken me to buy my first Amar Chitrakatha comics. One afternoon, I found a box in his cupboard. Inside were dozens of letters, some addressed to my mother, some to me, and some to no one. One letter stood out. Arav, if you ever find this, know that I was never disappointed in you. I knew life would pull you far from home, but I also knew you'd return when it mattered. The world needs your strength, but your heart, keep it rooted. That's what gives a man his wings. I cried for hours. That night, I sat in the Ambassador and played one of his favorite old songs on the tape deck. The car smelled like him, sandalwood, old leather, and memories. 10 years later, now I live in Dehradun with my wife Mira and our twin daughters. I left the corporate world 5 years ago and started a small creative writing school named Raj Academy after Papa. Every summer, we take a road trip in the restored Ambassador. My girls call it Dadu's car. They love the stories I tell them on the way. How Dadu once climbed a tree to escape school, or how he recited poems during power cuts. We visit the Hindon River every year. We sit under the neem tree, eat the same besan ladoos he loved, and watch the sun melt into the horizon. And each time I look up at the stars, I see him, shining, smiling, and still riding beside me. Time moves forward, but love travels in loops. The last ride with my father wasn't just a journey on a road. It was the unfolding of an entire life in a single day. A story told through turns, pauses, and the wind whispering between moments. I didn't lose him that day. I found him. In myself, in the way I father my children, in every classroom where a child is told, "You matter." And when it's my turn to take the last ride, I'll know what to do. I'll wear my kurta, maybe even a Nehru cap, sit beside my child in an old car and say, "Let's go to the river one last time."